A special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/thecyberwire. If the Cyberwire is a valuable part of your day and helps you do the work you do, we hope you'll become a supporter. Check it out at patreon.com/thecyberwire. Every little bit helps. Thanks. DHS tells the U.S. executive branch to stop using Kaspersky security software. Kromtech finds ElastiSearch servers hosting point-of-sale malware. BlueBorne bugs buzz billions of boxes. Equifax says that its breach was accomplished via the Apache Struts flaw patched in April. Industry notes include both venture funding and acquisition news. We take a quick look back at the Billington Cybersecurity Summit and in a scene soon to be ripped from the headlines. Counselor, watch yourself. I may not hold you in contempt, but if you continue, I'll cycle power and reboot you. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Recorded Future. Recorded Future is the real-time threat intelligence company whose patented technology continuously analyzes the entire web, developing cyber intelligence that gives analysts unmatched insight into emerging threats. At the Cyberwire, we subscribe to and profit from Recorded Future's Cyber Daily. As anyone in the industry will tell you, when analytical talent is as scarce as it is today, every enterprise owes it to itself to look into any technology that makes your security teams more productive and your intelligence more comprehensive and timely. Because that's what you want, actionable intelligence. Sign up for the Cyber Daily email and every day you'll receive the top trending indicators Recorded Future captures crossing the web. Cyber news, targeted industries, threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, malware, suspicious IP addresses, and much more. Subscribe today and stay a step or two ahead of the threat. Go to recordedfuture.com/intel to subscribe for free threat intelligence updates. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. Major funding for the Cyberwire podcast is provided by Cylance. I'm Dave Bittner in Baltimore with your Cyberwire summary for Thursday, September 14th, 2017. Yesterday, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security issued binding Operational Directive 17-01, directing that all U.S. government executive branch agencies stop using Kaspersky security software within 90 days. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Elaine Duke issued the order, which, as the DHS public statement says, calls on departments and agencies to identify any use or presence of Kaspersky products on their information systems in the next 30 days, to develop detailed plans to remove and discontinue present and future use of the products in the next 60 days, and at 90 days from the date of this directive, unless directed otherwise by DHS based on new information, to begin to implement the agency plans to discontinue use and remove the products from information systems. The directive is based on an assessment of risk, and DHS has not presented evidence publicly of any Kaspersky wrongdoing. It has, however, explained the risk as follows. Quote, Kaspersky antivirus products and solutions provide broad access to files and elevated privileges on the computers on which the software is installed, which can be exploited by malicious cyber actors to compromise those information systems. The department is concerned about the ties between certain Kaspersky officials and Russian intelligence and other government agencies, and requirements under Russian law that allow Russian intelligence agencies to request or compel assistance from Kaspersky and to intercept communications transiting Russian networks. The risk that the Russian government, whether acting on its own or in collaboration with Kaspersky, could capitalize on access provided by Kaspersky products to compromise federal information and information systems directly implicates U.S. national security. End quote. As White House Cybersecurity Director Robert Joyce commented yesterday at the Billington Cybersecurity Summit, the assessment of risk is based on requirements in Russian law that companies cooperate with the FSB intelligence agency. Joyce agreed with the directive. Quote, it was a risk-based decision and the right call. It's unacceptable that a company could move data to Russia where law requires it to cooperate with the FSB. End quote. The binding operational directive is perhaps not so final as it might appear. DHS says at the end of its statement that it's providing Kaspersky with the opportunity to submit a written response addressing or mitigating security concerns. Anyone else who has an interest in the matter will also be afforded the opportunity to comment. Watch the Federal Register for notices affecting Binding Operational Directive 17-01. We've got an interesting cybersecurity story from Brazil to share today. Renato Marinho is Chief Research Officer at Morphus Labs. A friend of his called about an interesting incident involving some social engineering. Someone with a good bit of specific knowledge about the friend's company called an employee in their finance department and told them that he was from their bank and that unless they updated their system with some specific software, they would lose access to their online banking system, which of course was important for their day-to-day operations. Mr. Marinho picks up the story from there.
The call was recorded. Fortunately, the employee didn't follow the instructions and ended the call. He suspected that it was a kind of scam and talked to the person in charge of information security inside of the company. That was my friend. When he sent me the audio recording of that call, I became very impressed about how it was done. It was done in a very professional way. It seems that the guy, the attacker, was calling from a real call center because of the background noise. I received the URL that the guy was enticing the victim to access. And that was the moment that I perceived that the URL was pointing to the Google Chrome App Store. I knew that it was a very different way of attack and started to analyze the extension code.
And so what did you find?
When I started to analyze the source code, it was not difficult to reverse engineer it because it was written in JavaScript. So the first thing I noticed that the extension was waiting for the user to access a specific banking URL, was waiting for the user to type the credentials at the website. It was prepared to capture the credentials and send to a remote server. The server, of course, was an attacker host. So it was receiving the credentials the user was typing.
What was the name of the Chrome extension? What was it disguising itself as?
Yes, the name is very strange. It's Interface Online. It's nothing to see about the banking name. It was also strange that there was no screenshot. Another interesting point is that the Chrome extension virus total height was 0. It's interesting to note that it was not identified by the antivirus solutions. It was installed by at least 30 victims.
So is the extension still on the Google Chrome store? Has it been pulled?
No, it isn't online anymore. After we reported to Google about the incident, they removed the extension from the App Store. After one day, we noticed that the extension came back with another name. We reported Google again, and they removed the extension for the second time.
So what is your advice for organizations looking to protect themselves against this sort of thing?
I think that is very difficult for a regular employee to detect this kind of attack because we are talking about an extension hosted at a Google Chrome official store. And we usually put much trust into these big companies. But, for example, user may suspect about the number of downloads of that extensions, the extension name. There was no screenshots or information about the banking itself into the extension. The extension asked for much permissions inside of the browser. It asked to read and to write any field inside any website. I think that in that point, Google could improve the security when an extension asks for read some field, including sensitive information like passwords. The user should be alerted or could be asked for additional permission to do that.
That's Renato Marinho from Morphus Labs. Kromtech Security says it's found more than 4,000 ElastiSearch servers hosting files related to Alina POS and Jack POS, both strains of point-of-sale malware. Both of the affected ElastiSearch servers are to be found in Amazon Web Services. Alina POS and Jack POS use the servers to collect, encrypt, and transfer credit card information scraped from point-of-sale terminals or infected Windows machines. The BlueBorne vulnerability in Bluetooth, whose discovery Armis Lab announced Tuesday, may have been addressed by both Microsoft and Google in their most recent patches, but the estimated rates of susceptibility to attack through this vector are astonishingly high. More than 5 billion devices worldwide are thought to be vulnerable. As usual, patching them all will amount to another labor of Hercules. Until you're sure you're patched and up to date, experts are advising people turn off Bluetooth when it's not in use. Equifax has cleared up the confusion over which vulnerability attackers used in their massive theft of the credit bureau's data. It was the earlier Apache Struts vulnerability, CVE 2017-5638, which was patched in April, some 2 months before Equifax sustained its attack. The credit bureau had earlier suggested that it was the victim of an attack that used either a much more recently patched Apache Struts vulnerability or some hitherto unknown zero-day. But no, it's the old bug after all. There's some piling on. Okay, a lot of piling on. Rival credit bureau Experian complains that Equifax's clumsy disclosures have impeded Experian's ability to ensure the security of the data it holds. Tom's Guide reports that other credit bureau systems in India may have been vulnerable to the same Apache Struts bug that affected Equifax, although there are no reports of other data breaches similar to those Equifax sustained. And there's been unseemly schadenfreude over Equifax's choice of passwords for admin accounts in its Argentinian operations. Username admin, password admin, which would seem easy enough to remember. In industry news, AppGuard announces that it's closed a $30 million round of Series B funding. Silent Circle is buying Casala, and Thales announced its purchase of Guavas. Brocade's acquisition by Broadcom is proving rocky for employees, reports indicate, with several executives departing early over uncertainties as to when the deal will actually close. The annual Billington Cybersecurity Summit was held in Washington, and the industry and government leaders who spoke agreed that proliferation of the Internet of Things, designed for the most part with inadequate attention to security, has vastly increased the attack surface U.S. critical infrastructure presents to adversaries. There was a great deal of clarity on the part of the Director of National Intelligence and others as to who those adversaries in cyberspace are. Russia, front and center of course, and out to erode public trust. China, interested mostly in economic advantage. Iran, a dangerous regional junior version of Russia. North Korea, determined to secure survival of Mr. Kim by whatever means it deems necessary. And violent extremist groups, a euphemism for ISIS and competing jihadist organizations. These last have negligible hacking capability, at least so far, but they've excelled at information operations. We have further accounts of the summit on our website, with more coming. And to return to the Equifax breach, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission has opened an investigation into the incident, and the U.S. Senate is making noises about conducting its own inquiries. Even the robots are piling on. Most legal practice has yet to be automated, but there's an undercurrent of suspicion that the profession may be as ripe for disruption by robots as the long-haul trucking industry seems to be. Do Not Pay, a robo-lawyer best known for helping drivers appeal and beat parking tickets, has apparently joined the plaintiff's bar. Do Not Pay will provide aggrieved victims of the breach with the documents they need to sue Equifax in small claims court. You can apparently do this for damages of up to $25,000. And if you don't like how your lawyer's dealing with you, just reboot. Time to share some information from our sponsor, Cylance. We've been following WannaCry, Petya, NotPetya, and other forms of destructive ransomware for weeks. Cylance would like you to know that they can prevent Petya-like ransomware from executing in your system, and they'd also like you to know that they've been doing that since October of 2015. How's that for getting ahead of the threat? Their success against NotPetya demonstrates the benefits of their temporal predictive advantage. Cylance Protect stops both file and fileless malware. It runs silently in the background. And best of all, it doesn't suffer from the blind spots in legacy defenses that NotPetya exploited to such devastating effect. If you don't have Cylance Protect, and if you'd like to learn more about how it can defend your enterprise, contact them at Cylance.com and find out how their AI-driven solution can predict and prevent the unknown unknowns from troubling you. And we thank Cylance for sponsoring our show. Joining me once again is Johannes Ulrich. He's from the SANS Technology Institute and also the ISC Stormcast podcast. Johannes, so welcome back. You wanted to give us an update today on the Mirai botnet. What do we need to know?
Yeah, the Mirai botnet really sort of started to emerge about a year ago. That's when we saw the first sort of wave of attacks that used this magic password that these security camera DVRs are vulnerable for. Now, what we really see is that it hasn't really let up. There is still probably 100,000 or more infected systems out there that are constantly scanning the internet. I connected one of these DVRs to my standard small business cable modem connection, and within 2 minutes, repeatedly, it got infected with various versions of this malware. So essentially, as an end user, you have not even a chance to sort of download a patch or apply security settings if you're connecting a system like this to an open internet connection these days.
So with these cameras, is there any way of using them safely, or is it better just to avoid them altogether?
The best thing is to avoid them altogether. There is no simple patch for them. Some of them supposedly have firmware updates, but they're very difficult to find and to apply. You may be able to put them behind a firewall, but then again, you're losing some of the functionality because now you no longer are able to remote access your security footage, which is one of the features people install them for.
And is there a master database where if you're in the market for a security camera, you can check to make sure it's not vulnerable to this?
That's a real tricky part. There are some databases like this, but the problem is that these cameras, or also these DVRs these cameras connect to, they are being sold under a large number of different brand names. There are only 3-4 different manufacturers, but they're being sold under dozens of different brand names. So for the end user, it's very difficult to figure out if they're receiving a vulnerable model or not.
All right. Good information as always. Johannes Ulrich, thanks for joining us. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, along with interviews, our glossary, and more, visit thecyberwire.com. Thanks to all of our sponsors who make the CyberWire possible, especially to our sustaining sponsor, Cylance. To find out how Cylance can help protect you using artificial intelligence, visit cylance.com. Thanks to all of our supporters on Patreon. And if supporting us on Patreon is just beyond your means, well, we understand, but we hope you'll take the time to leave us a review on iTunes. It's another way you can help support the show, and it really does help people find us. The CyberWire podcast is produced by Pratt Street Media. Our editor is John Petrick. Social media editor is Jennifer Iben. Technical editor is Chris Russell. Executive editor is Peter Kilpie. And I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.